Good morning, this is Andrew Turner, the Education Technologist at Illinois College. Today I wanted to show how to use Moodle and an ePortfolio along with a rubric to grade an assignment from a student to assess work in a summative and formative fashion. So what I can do is go ahead and show you how to use this in a Moodle course that I've created on how to create a Moodle course. So this way you're using what we're talking about in order to learn what we need to do. So basically it's just a matter of adding an assignment. An assignment will have a representation in your gradebook, and your gradebook will have a rubric that's associated with the assignment. So the rubric will have points where you grade the assignment based on selecting 1, 2, 3, or 4 points for each competency in that assessment. So we're just going to use 2 competencies. We're going to have quality and quantity, and then we'll have 4 possible points for each competency, and I'll show you how that can be set up in Moodle such that all you have to do is click the right corresponding cell in the matrix in that rubric. So here's what that would look like. What I want to go ahead and do is, here in my Moodle course, I want to create a new assignment. So I will turn editing on, and then we add an activity. And in this case we could just use online text because the assignment would just have questions that the student would answer. Maybe you would have a document template where you have a few bullet points that the student needs to cover for the assignment. So let's make an assignment and let's choose online text. You could also have uploading of a single file, and that could be a Word document generated from Microsoft Word or OpenOffice or LibreOffice or Google Docs, whatever that might be. Or I like the online text because you can simply copy and paste from whatever text editor you're using. In this case, the text editor is the web browser directly, so that might be more convenient for many users. The assignment name in this case, we're going to call this an introductory paragraph. Just something very trivial, something very simple to use. As an example, so we'll just call this please enter your CV or resume in order to get to know one another. Alright, and then we'll say that has 100 possible points. Now I like 100 because 100 can be 100 points or it can be a percentage. So that way you can map any grade to a percentage, or if you use 100 as the points, so much the better. You have 90 points out of 100, or you have 90% out of 100. So we're going to go ahead and use 100. Now there are different grading methods. The grading method that we want to use here is one called Rubric, and this is one that I've set up. Anybody can set these up under grading methods, and if you need help with anything, just click the yellow and black icon, and then you can learn more about it. You can also learn more about Moodle simply by going to Moodle, Googling for Moodle, Google Moodle, and then we go to moodle.org and then find some documents about how to use, how to create a rubric. And then there's 896 articles about how to use rubrics. So we are on Moodle 2.2 if you need to narrow in on that. So we're using rubric as the grading method. In the grading category, a category in my course would be, say for example, homework is one category, quizzes, you might have extra credit, final, research paper, stuff like that. So I'm just going to put this in the category rubric. The category has a binding between the weights that you want to grade each category in. So if you have homework and then you have 7 assignments, you can set up assignments where each assignment is worth 100 points. And then say you had 7 assignments, 700 points, 2 tests, 200 points each, and then 1 final you might have 100 points, so that'd be 1,000 points total. Well, obviously the tests would be weighted more than the homework, so you could just simply weight the tests more than the homework. Outcomes for your course have a correspondence with have a correlation to the competencies in the course. So say this is a computer science course, the competencies would be quality and quantity. So we'll go ahead and click the baseline outcome, just because the outcome that I want for this course is a -1 to a 0 to a 1. Somebody is going to end up around that base center line, that baseline. So if they exceed a 1, that's great, that's off the charts. If they exceed a -1, that's very poor, obviously. So if you hit a 0, that would be like passing. Anything above a 0 would be passing. So there's any number of fractions between 0 and 1 and 0 and -1. It's just something I like to do. Any outcome that you decide that you create can be created by you and then added here. So we'll go ahead and hit save and display. Now here's where we create our rubric. We can create a new grading form from a template. What I like to do is just start from scratch, just because it's so easy. This rubric is what I'm going to use to grade the assignment. So I'm going to call this a basic rubric. I'm going to call this 2 competencies, which are going to be quantity and quality, 1 through 4. And then we're going to go ahead and add a criteria here. Add 1 criterion, this will be quantity. And then you can either get 1, 2, 3, or like we said, 4 points. Now the level is going to be basically good. Now this will be poor. We'll say this is going to be good. This is going to be great. And these are silly examples, and this will be perfect. You would have a very detailed reasoning for why you would grade somebody as 1 point for quantity. Now quality, we'll say, the same thing. Poor, good, great, perfect. Alright, we're done there. We've added the 4 different points possible for quantity and quality, so that'll be 8 points possible for this homework assignment. I'm going to show you what that looks like. We'll go ahead and see that, when a student logs in, they'll see that they need to submit something for this assignment. So I'm just going to temporarily switch the role down here to student. I'm going to add a submission, and I'll just copy my CV and resume here. I'll spare you that. It would be as big as you want. You can see you can grow that text box, and you can format it with rich text, however you like, bold, italics, etc. Bullet points, web links, you can insert images, and this sort of thing, just like a little Microsoft Word in the browser. Kind of nice for the student to use. We'll go ahead and hit Save Changes there. Now, you can go back in and edit that submission, but the portfolio is something that will be the destination for your student work, where they're proud of that work, and then you're proud of it. You want to have that student put this assignment, this key assignment out of this course, into their ePortfolio. Say they're a computer science major. As a freshman in CSC 160, if they write a really great computer program, they'll go ahead and add that to their ePortfolio when they're a freshman. In the fall semester, say in the spring semester, they revise that program so that it's just dynamite. They go ahead and update that same file in their ePortfolio. Now, next year when they're a sophomore, maybe they're getting into more database things, so then they create a little database and they write a tutorial, maybe a video walkthrough, and then they want to add that to their ePortfolio. So the teacher that's teaching the computer science student on their sophomore year will be able to communicate with the teacher that taught the student in the freshman year and say, these are the competencies that we've defined for our department. Maybe we could agree on 4 competencies for our department, maybe put that through the department chair, and then that way we can all sort of have a similar competency set that the student would use for the ePortfolio. So at the end of the senior year, the student graduates, he sends that ePortfolio off to a future employer. The employer looks at that. They see the ePortfolio. They see that you have endorsed that ePortfolio with comments and grades, and that it makes a good match for the contact information and for the quality of the work that the student has done for either graduate school or a future employer. Also, to show other colleagues, such as LinkedIn, what you can do. So this portfolio is going to be something that you can also use as a teacher to assess documents in a summative way to report to administration about the progress of students. And this touches on an important thing. If student A is good in quantity, but say student B is not good in quantity, he's good in quality. Student A is not good in quality. Students A and B would make a nice complementary pair, because if you pair them up, where one is lacking, the other exceeds, so that when you couple those two together, it provides a better grade for them both. So that using these ePortfolios in the Rubric system will let you sort of, if you have a larger class, determine who needs to be paired with who in order to provide the grade that they want to end up at if they're lacking in a particular competency. So hopefully, that makes sense. I often see in classrooms in the back row, you might have a student who's good with social skills, but then another student is not good in social skills. He's good in, say, technical skills. So you might pair the socially awkward / technically proficient student with someone who's not technically proficient but exceeds in social skills. So that might make a good pairing. You can export this assignment to, as a student, Google Drive. And when you do so, you can go ahead and make sure that this HTML, this might be a long assignment, that actually attaches to your Google Drive. Now, I will go ahead and continue to where we were, and you can do a file download. Now the file download is going to have two formats. It's LEAP2A and the HTML. I recommend the HTML. We're going to go ahead and hit continue. Now for this assignment, I can go ahead and have my HTML here. When I open that, here would be in HTML format the assignment that I typed, so that I can push that on to graduate school, or again upload to my ePortfolio. Google Drive is a good option if you want to use the ePortfolio in Google Sites, because Google Drive is the storage mechanism for Google Sites. So we have the ePortfolio exported. If the student wants to use that later in his ePortfolio, you can go in and grade this now. So under grades, just go to course administration, and then I need to return to my normal role. I will go to course administration, grades. Now we see all of the different assignments, and we want to go ahead and find the assignment that we created. We have some different assignments here. Moodle Quiz Basics, and all these different assignments are ones that you can assign to different categories and then weigh the different categories. Introductory paragraph is the assignment that we just worked with. So if I want to grade this student, I want to go ahead and say that for this homework assignment, he got a 3 and a 2. So I'm going to go ahead and assign this to the one outcome. That was a passing. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save and show next. And what that'll do is show each student in the class their grades, so that you can then grade them. Say I wanted to grade this assignment for Karen. I want to go ahead and hit grade, and then I can select she got a perfect in quantity and a perfect in quality. So I'll go ahead and leave some feedback here. If you had uploaded an assignment here, I would have graded it like this and provided feedback in this manner. And she will see that feedback when she looks at her grade in Moodle. So see that it was a 100. If I were to update this grade to something else, that'll be a 6 points, obviously out of 8. So that percentage will be reflected here. That's a 67%. So change that back to 4 out of 4. Say I've paired her up with someone who is better in quality, and then Karen's quality will raise, and then the other person wasn't good in quantity, so Karen would have helped the other person with the quantity aspect or the competency. So for those competencies, you can integrate that into your gradebook like so, and then read the feedback like that. So the rubric and the ePortfolio, now you can see, are working. But where is the ePortfolio? Well, think about two things you need to know about students. Number one, you need to know their contact information. The primary means of contact these days is email, so you need to know their email address. Now, the reason that email is superior to, say, phone or text or things like that is because the student identity is going to be represented, number one, by email, and number two, by URL. And what do I mean by URL? A URL is going to be the student's website. So students who don't know how to code websites are going to use something like, LinkedIn or Facebook for their profile. Maybe they want to use Google Sites or something like that. I've seen a lot of students use that. So for the student site that they send off to graduate school or to employers that has been endorsed by a college, similar to a transcript in a manner of speaking, an endorsed, officiated ePortfolio mechanism produced by an institution that's made public, integrating documents that were endorsed by the faculty of that institution, is something that can be very valuable to an employer or to a graduate school when the student is being assessed, and when you're assessing that student throughout his or her career. So something to keep in mind, that you want to have this student's URL bookmarked or somehow copied down. You have their email address, you have their URL. Just get used to the fact that the URL for the student is going to be just another line in the address for that student. So we want to go into the ePortfolio for this student, and then we can look at how to add that assignment to an ePortfolio. I'm going to go ahead and log out, and I can show how that can be accessed. Now the Exhibit ePortfolio can be accessed here under My Portfolio, and this is something that you can add a block down the lower right when you turn editing on for that course. Go back to Moodle, and then down here where you see add a block, when you turn editing on, you can add the Exhibit ePortfolio, which will show up here. It's not showing up here for me now because I've already added it, so that's where you will find that. And when I click My Portfolio, I can edit this, and I've entered in just my own, very simple CV here. Categories are categories that would represent your proficiencies as a major, say in Spanish or foreign language, in this case computer science, or in my case, education technology. So My Portfolio will have new items entered that are possible to produce in the view that's going to be the URL for the student's ePortfolio. You can add a new one like that. Let's go ahead and add a new file, and the file we can just call example file upload. We add that to a category. I'm going to call that an ePortfolio, and then we can simply upload a file from the file system, and let's see if that is going to show up under my downloads. Say we have an ePortfolio document that we want to use. It could be any of these. Pretend we uploaded that. Then we have Google Docs as a source too, so I can pull Google Docs from my own Google Docs repository, and then say we wanted to select one of those. Say I wanted to choose iteration over an array as something that I want to use. I'm going to go ahead and select this file, and it will upload that from my Google Docs. So we'll call this iteration over array. This is example code for assessment. And we'll hit save. Now we see that right here. Now we can go back in and edit that later if we want to. So this is the collection of documents that will be composing my ePortfolio. The view is the result of that composition of the ePortfolio. You can call this different things by clicking the edit button, and then we have the internal and external access that you can add. A view, again, is the result of composing an ePortfolio from the available documents that you upload. In other words, just because you upload the document doesn't mean that it will automatically populate the ePortfolio. The ePortfolio waits, so to speak, for you to add that content to the ePortfolio. So when you click Edit over there on the right hand side, this is the result of the composition of my ePortfolio. Notice how this is purple and these are green. If I want to add iteration over array to my ePortfolio, I would simply select and drag that into the ePortfolio, and then I can put that at the bottom if I wanted to, like so, and then eliminate that if I wanted to. Now when I go ahead and save the changes, I have an external link. Remember, we said students have an email address, they might have a URL. So I'm going to go ahead and open that in a new tab, so that now I can show this external ePortfolio link to an employer. Notice it looks very plain, and there's no space here. That's in the code. That's a fault in the code in the system that we have selected. That is not changeable. I've looked into it. Unfortunately, we can't put a space there for the time being using this system. This is one of the reasons why I'm going to recommend something else from the Moodle ePortfolio system. It's fine as it is. You can use the Moodle ePortfolio system, but look at the deficiencies that we see that are very clear. They might get us by, but it's something that I think we can do better on, and doing better will require using something a little more sophisticated than just Moodle only. So here I just have some JavaScript that shows, iteration over an array, how would one do so, and then this is just JavaScript code that I created for a teacher who wanted to automate the answers being graded in a Google form. So, that's just one example of, a day's work, half a day's work that might look good to an employer or to a graduate school or to another colleague who's needing to solve a common problem. Now, here we have in my ePortfolio a Google Site link. Now, Google Sites is something that you can use for this ePortfolio. I put the link to my Google Site here. Now, this is my Google Site ePortfolio. This is something that a student can have. Look at the branding, it's styled. You have the calendar integration, you have the tasks integration, you have rolling updates. These project objectives and the competencies are all here. You have a recent site activity contact information, plus all of the documents that I add to this site are going to be able to be viewed only by specific people. Notice I'm logged into Google Chrome as my personal email address, and I did that so that you will see that not just anybody can have access to documents on this site. If I click Rubric example, I've made that public. So this Rubric is one example. You can get these from this site that you can go to, and that's basically for free. This is our campus's rubric system, and these rubrics are free. You can copy and paste things like that. So a public document can be here, or a private document can be here, and they can both be there simultaneously. Live text is a Google document that I've also created. Once you request access, if you don't already have access, you as a teacher or student with the ePortfolio can grant access to that for that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Digital Learning Center. I've made that document public so that anybody can see that on my ePortfolio. Now look, this is a Google document with screenshots and links to YouTube videos that I can use to find a video tutorial about, and this is me showing how to use one of the classrooms on campus. I've got a basic and an advanced one. So this document has a ton of information about how to use the Digital Learning Center, for example, to support telepresence, which might be one competency in an education technology course. Speech recognition, Google Hangouts, Skype, things like this, telepresence, online learning, MOOCs, things like this that you might want to learn about, you might want to have in your ePortfolio. So imagine if a student were to have his homework assignments here in the Google site. Now, how do I assess a Google site that represents a student's ePortfolio? The answer is your assignments that we showed earlier, such as the CV URL and the homework that I graded for Karen Dean. as an example, that assignment is really just all that we really need in that assignment, in this introductory paragraph. What if I were to just copy this link, and then when I put this introductory paragraph assignment into the system, what if I simply pasted the link to my Google ePortfolio here as my homework? If I did so, then as a teacher I could simply grade that. So I could change this homework. I can't now because it's already been graded, but I could have pasted that URL here as my homework. My homework submission is a URL. Now, myself as a teacher, I click that. I look at the ePortfolio. I look at the online homework. I grade the online homework according to the rubric that I've set up. And I can comment as a teacher below if I have permission. Now, say someone with a PhD who has taught this course, who has graded this assignment, would endorse and comment on this assignment below. Suddenly, that's much like LinkedIn, where you have another professional endorsing your work in order to support that person's proficiency in a particular competency. And that looks good for the college because the competency, say if it's for the Lumina standard outcomes, you want to have those outcomes as criteria that are met by this degree granting institution. It supports the regional accreditation of this institution because the competencies are being met. It's clear, this is proof online that students are doing this, they are proficient in that competency. It looks good for the student because they get the endorsement of the professional with a PhD in that field for an employer or for another graduate school. It looks good for the student because they can also share that out to other students to support collaboration in small groups. When they're at the graduate level, they're going to be in small groups, 500 level classes, and they're going to need to collaborate in order to get work done, such as in the real world where we need to work together to get real work done. These sorts of problem-solving things are going to look good for the institution and for the teachers, staff, faculty, and the students. It looks good for the staff because they can go in and perform audits of these assessments so that there is a public and there is an authenticated system where not just anybody can see this. You can switch it over to public later if you want to, but you can have the staff assess these in a summative fashion after the formative method has been uploaded. The formative method is the ePortfolio creation, the homework submission. Then suddenly we cross that transition over into the formative assessment, from the formative assessment to the summative assessment, where then your professionals would assess the documents in a summative fashion according to the competencies that the department chair has set up in advance. So if we agree on 4 or 5 competencies per department, we can have these as outcomes, as competencies in the homework assignments spanning multiple years. Maybe we'll start with the seniors, then we can move down to the juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, so that they know once you get your requirements, gen ed requirements out of the way, then you're going to focus on your specialization. We know exactly what the criteria are for that specialization. In my graduate school, the specialization was information assurance, and the competencies were you need to understand security, you need to understand databases, you need to understand web development, you need to understand programming, you need to understand encryption, and these types of things to support that specific proficiency in that specialization. So hopefully this has been helpful. It's a lot of information, but please feel free to send an email to helpdesk@ic.edu if you need help with this ePortfolio, formative, and summative assessment system. Thanks a lot.